What's going on, everyone? Now, this article is fascinating to me. It's from PJ Media. More than 60% of racist Mexicans want migrants to go home. I love the way they say racist Mexicans. That's more of a hit to the Democrats, always clamoring the racist card. According to a Washington Post Reforma poll, 6 in 10 Mexicans believe the migrants are a burden on the country, taking jobs and benefits that belong to Mexican citizens. Another 55% support telling the migrants to go home. Wow! Now, according to the American left, these would be racist, xenophobic bigots. They don't like brown people. Brown people that don't like brown people, leftist heads would be exploding if they were to actually read this article, which they won't. That's why I will. No, really, not kidding. Are Mexicans racist like Trump? If not, why? Are those calling Trump a racist themselves? Now that's something we on the right have been saying for a long time. You know the old saying, when you point at someone, you got 3 fingers pointed right back at you. We all know the left are very hypocritical when it comes to stuff like this. They love doing things based on ideological differences. It doesn't make any sense. The left's gone insane. They live in a clown world. We know this. Maybe they don't think Mexicans are smart enough to be racist. Perhaps they don't think Mexicans are intelligent enough to recognize the moral goodness of their welcoming open border policies, globalist policies, which globalism is never going to work. Doesn't work that way. Too many different customs and cultures. They don't melt well. They don't melt well together. It just doesn't work. Those findings defy the perception that Mexico, a country that has sent millions of its own migrants to the United States, sending billions of dollars in remittances, is sympathetic to the surge of Central Americans. Instead, the data suggests Mexicans have turned against the migrants transiting through their own country, expressing antipathy and would be familiar to many supporters of President Trump's north of the border. Yeah, it's because Trump has common sense views. Yes, they're nationalist views, but for clarification to those that don't know the difference between nationalism and white nationalism, there's a huge difference there. White nationalists believe in an ethos state where only whites can be pretty much allowed, which is a ridiculous way of thinking. Nationalist, on the other hand, can be any race, religion, or creed that support the country and are patriotic towards America. Big difference there, but the left doesn't seem to know how to grasp this, because you need something like this device to actually study their brain. It's pretty sad. But let's go on with the story. So human nature and common sense defy the perception of Mexico. WashPo and most liberals can't fathom the reaction of ordinary Mexicans, which mirrors the reaction of ordinary people across Europe to the obvious, visible threat that these migrants pose. It's not the elites whose jobs and benefits are at risk. The people funding this and funding the activist groups and all that stuff. They have luxury of pontification from on high, or pontificating on high, lecturing the rest of us on the correct perception. At some point, it just makes you want to vomit. Yes, most people are just... The polls are showing that most Americans are just fed up. They're just fed up with the constant media just forcing this crap down your throat when why aren't we talking about like legislating and how there is a lack of that happening because the left's obstruction. They won't. There's a little poll here, or a little graph. Most Mexicans say Central American migrants should be deported to their country of origin. Q. What should Mexico do with the migrants from Central America that cross through the country trying to reach the United States? 55% deport them to their country of origins. 33% give them temporary residence. Give them residency in Mexico is only 7%. No opinion was 6%. So you can see here from the vast majority want them to go back to their home countries. It kind of reminds me of what Americans think. So what's the difference between Trump's ignorant outburst and the beliefs of ordinary Mexicans? Both believe that the newcomers are after their jobs and benefits. Both believe they should go home. But Trump is white, so American observers of Mexico were confident that President Lopez Obrador, I might be saying that wrong, I apologize, would lose support from his far-left base for stepping up enforcement of immigration laws. Hoo boy, were they wrong. When Mexico's President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador agreed to step up Mexico's immigration enforcement to avert U.S. tariffs, many analysts expected his base to be disillusioned. Lopez had long advocated for migrants' rights and the freedom of movement for asylum seekers, which it's pretty provable that most of these people are not asylum seekers. They're coming here for economic benefit, which isn't covered under asylum laws. AOC, read. But 51% of Mexicans support using the country's newly formed National Guard to combat migration of undocumented immigrants in Mexico. A key provision of the agreement, just under half of Mexicans have heard about the June agreement. But among those who have, 59% favor it, while only 34% opposed. Some dissatisfaction with the migration pact may come from Lopez supporters who believe the agreement is unsympathetic towards Central Americans in search of refuge. But in parts of Mexico, the most vocal critique of the deal is that it has forced Mexican cities to contend with a growing pool of asylum seekers. In some northern cities, rumors have spread that African migrants are carrying Ebola, which could happen. I mean, Africa, finally, for the first time in forever, I've seen the news finally admitting that there is a crisis of Ebola in Africa. But I doubt most of these people that are coming here have Ebola. Someone would have noticed it. In others, officials say, they've simply run out of places for migrants to stay. And that's another thing. Just because countries are big doesn't mean there's enough room for a mass influx of people. Yes, our country may be huge, but where do these people go? They go to liberal-run cities, generally, and just hemorrhage the system. They destroy the system there. It can't cope with all these people. The vast majority of immigrants and illegal immigrants used our social welfare programs. Excuse me, my mouth is not working with my brain today. Liberals are amazed that Mexico defies expectations in their attitudes towards migrants, and surprised that their president is being supported by many in his base. But why? In nation after nation around the world, we have seen ordinary people expressing the same exact sentiments that Trump has been expressing since his presidency began. Are liberals really so stupid that they can continuously miss what everyone knows? Sure, their elevated sense of moral superiority is fed by believing that inbred redneck racist crackers. I love being called a cracker. That shit makes me laugh. agree with Trump. But what about everyone else? Whether you think Trump is an ignorant racist demagogue or an ignorant racially racially insensitive political cynic is unimportant. Whether you love him, hate him, or are driven mad by him, a majority of the people around the world agree with him and not with liberals. This is what we've been talking about. National populism is a growing sentiment around the world. And you know what started it? Liberal policies. Liberalism is dying. It is dying around the world. National populism, which is not a bad thing, is growing exceedingly more powerful around the world. Europe is completely starting to turn now. The death of the EU should hopefully come soon. The EU is just a globalist organization that takes people that would have generally no power and makes them have power over all the countries in the EU. A non-voted in group that decides what all these countries are going to do. Sounds a little authoritarian and, dare I say, fascistic. But yeah, so you can see, even the Mexicans, who everyone says Trump hates, which he doesn't. He just hates illegal immigration. That's pretty much what it comes down to, because it does hemorrhage. Even the Mexicans in Mexico complain about these illegal people because it's hemorrhaging their system too. This is what an open borders globalistic view does. It causes the death of nations. The world's waking up. The whole world is waking up. And the left are too dumb to see this. They don't care. They are the party of mafiols and fake outrage. They want to be mad. They just want something to be mad about. These people don't know how to live happily. It's probably because all the leftist views they've been force-fed through college or through college-educated parents who were also indoctrinated. So, this is a positive sign for us conservatives. Very positive sign. Soon, the left won't have a leg to stand on. They won't have no support except from the far left. And these justice Democrats and the progressives. All the poor moderate Democrats, I feel sorry for you. But you know what? There have been polls, and I've put them up here, and that show the right is very centered. The right, through the years, has actually moved towards the center in the left direction, which isn't a bad thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. You know, I consider myself a very staunch conservative, but I do, on certain things, I do have more like classical liberal leanings. But classical liberals are nowadays considered conservatives. Most moderate liberals are considered conservatives by the progressive liberal standpoint. The dynamics are changing. Everything's shifting, and shifting slightly to the right, because the right has shifted slightly to the left, and the left has gone so far left, they're not even on the same planet as us anymore. But I'd love to hear your comments on this one. This stuff like this fascinates me, because it goes completely against the narratives people are spoon-fed by the legacy media. And this is the reality of the situation. It's not the clown world that the far left progressives and whatnot are in. This is reality. So I'd love to hear your comments on it. And as always, like, share, and subscribe. And I will catch you on the flip side.